Welcome to Finance and Tax Global Insights. Take a look at the device you're watching this on, the coffee you might be drinking, or the clothes you're wearing. Chances are, their components and materials have crossed multiple international borders to reach you. This vast dance of global commerce doesn't just happen by chance. It's governed by a complex and often invisible web of rules. So who writes these rules? Who steps in when economic giants clash over steel tariffs or agricultural subsidies? Who decides the fate of trade disputes worth billions and oversees the flow of trillions of dollars in goods and services every single year? The answer lies in a global powerhouse most people have heard of, but few truly understand: the World Trade Organization, or WTO. It's an institution that operates largely behind the scenes, yet its decisions ripple outwards, shaping entire industries and national economies. Today, we're pulling back the curtain to uncover how this hidden force influences the price of your groceries, the availability of your favorite products, and the health of your country's economy. The story of the WTO is the story of the modern globalized world, and that story begins in the rubble of World War II. World leaders looked back at the economic chaos of the 1930s. They saw how aggressive protectionism and trade wars had deepened the Great Depression, choked off international cooperation, and contributed to the climate of conflict. To rebuild, they needed a new system, one that fostered economic stability and interdependence. Their first major step in 1947 was the creation of the General Agreement on Tariffs and Trade, better known as GATT. It wasn't a formal organization, but a provisional agreement, a rule book founded on a simple yet revolutionary principle: encouraging freer, fairer trade by getting countries to negotiate mutual tariff reductions. And for nearly 50 years, it worked remarkably well. Through a series of complex, multi-year negotiating rounds, GATT successfully lowered tariffs on industrial goods, fueling unprecedented global economic growth. But by the 1980s, the global economy was evolving faster than the agreement. Trade was no longer just about physical goods. New, complex issues were emerging that GATT was never designed to handle. The protection of intellectual property like software and patents, the booming trade in services like banking and telecommunications, and the notoriously difficult issue of agricultural subsidies. The world needed a more robust framework. This led to the most ambitious negotiation of all, the Uruguay Round. After 8 long years of talks, in 1995, the World Trade Organization was born in Geneva, Switzerland. This was a monumental shift. GATT, the Provisional Agreement, was replaced by the WTO, a permanent, member-driven organization with a far broader mandate and, crucially, a more powerful system for settling disputes. Headquartered in that same building in Geneva, it became the central forum for negotiating and enforcing global trade rules. Its mission is simple to state, but incredibly complex to achieve: to ensure that trade flows as smoothly, predictably, and freely as possible. Smoothly means cutting red tape at the border. Predictably means businesses can be confident that trade barriers won't suddenly change. And freely means lowering those barriers through negotiation, promoting fair competition. But behind every rule, every tariff percentage, and every legal clause are real people: workers, entrepreneurs, farmers, and consumers whose livelihoods are directly tied to the ebb and flow of global commerce. In this video, we'll break down exactly how the WTO works and why it matters so much. We'll start by exploring its core mechanisms, how decisions are actually made. Then, we'll connect those abstract rules to their real-world impacts on businesses and households. We'll dive into some of the WTO's most famous and controversial disputes to see the system in action. We'll also fairly examine the major critiques leveled against the organization and look at the urgent reforms being debated to address the challenges of the 21st century, from climate change to digital trade. Our goal is to provide clarity over hype, giving you the essential information you need to form your own informed view on this powerful and often misunderstood institution. Now let's step into the negotiation room. The WTO isn't a company or a court. It's a member-driven negotiation table for the world. Today, it has 164 member countries, a collective that represents over 98% of all global trade. This near-universal membership gives its rules immense weight and reach. On paper, the structure is democratic. Every member gets one vote, from superpowers to small island nations. This principle of sovereign equality is fundamental. But real power lies in consensus. Instead of voting, major decisions are made only when no member formally objects. This protects national sovereignty, but it's a double-edged sword. A single nation can block progress, leading to lengthy deadlocks. The WTO's work rests on three core functions: negotiating agreements, monitoring trade policies, and settling disputes. First, negotiations. These are long-term rounds where members work to reduce trade barriers. This goes beyond just lowering tariffs or import taxes. It also involves tackling non-tariff barriers like restrictive quotas, unfair government subsidies, and complex regulations that can hinder the free flow of goods and services. Second, monitoring. For the system to work, transparency is key. Through the Trade Policy Review Mechanism, members must regularly report on their trade policies. Their peers can then review these reports and ask questions in open forums, creating accountability and heading off potential conflicts before they escalate. The third function, settling disputes, is the WTO's enforcement arm. When a country believes another is breaking the rules, the first required step is a formal consultation, giving the parties 60 days to resolve the issue directly. If consultations fail, an impartial panel of experts is established to hear the case. This panel examines the evidence and legal arguments from both sides, then issues a binding ruling based on WTO law. If a member doesn't comply, the WTO can authorize the winning country to impose targeted retaliation, like tariffs on specific goods. For example, when the US and China clash over tariffs, this structured process provides an off-ramp from chaotic tit-for-tat escalations that destabilize markets. Historically, an appellate body reviewed these panel decisions, acting as a final court of appeals to ensure legal consistency. We'll explore the critical issue of its recent paralysis later on. WTO agreements are incredibly broad, covering not just goods, but also services, intellectual property like patents and copyrights, agricultural trade, and technical standards that keep global commerce predictable. To ensure everyone can participate, the WTO provides technical assistance and training, helping developing countries build the capacity they need to implement complex rules and benefit from global trade. So what does all this mean for your daily life? Let's see. Global trade routes move everything from grain to microchips, and WTO rules smooth those flows. Your smartphone's price is shaped by rules that reduce import taxes on tech components. Your morning coffee flows from farms to cafes thanks to agreements protecting agricultural trade. Imported clothes and cars? Their costs reflect tariff negotiations hashed out over years. The WTO helps businesses reach customers worldwide with less friction and fewer surprises. For developing nations, it offers paths to new markets that can build industries and jobs. Consumers gain from more choice and often lower prices. But the gains aren't evenly shared, and adjustment can be painful for some sectors and workers. Rules on standards aim to keep trade fair without becoming hidden barriers. Trade isn't just goods. Services and digital flows matter more each year. Small firms can now sell abroad with clearer rules, logistics, and payments. Predictable rules reduce uncertainty, which supports investment and jobs. Sustainability provisions are growing, but critics say they still lag the urgency. When frictions rise, disputes test the system. Let's look at high-profile cases. The WTO's dispute settlement body has handled more than 600 major cases, Some disputes ripple through entire industries. The US and China clashed over steel and aluminum tariffs, testing national security claims and trade limits. The US and EU fought over subsidies to Boeing and Airbus, leading to authorized retaliatory tariffs. India and the US sparred over agricultural export restrictions and domestic support programs. These outcomes affect millions of workers, investors, and consumers worldwide. After rulings, countries often adjust laws or face retaliatory tariffs. The process encourages settlement first, then structured adjudication with deadlines. Since 2019, the appellate body has been paralyzed by political gridlock, complicating final rulings. Some members created interim appeal arrangements, but they don't cover everyone. Clear resolution channels can stabilize markets. Uncertainty raises costs. Behind noisy headlines, the system is mostly procedural and rule-driven. Cases refine how rules are understood and enforced. Yet tensions remain between global openness and national goals. Let's hear the case against and for the WTO. Not everyone loves the WTO. Its most famous flashpoint was the 1999 Battle of Seattle, where protesters accused it of being undemocratic. They argued its binding rules, often negotiated in secret, allowed commercial interests to override national laws protecting labor and the environment, effectively undermining sovereignty. This critique has persisted. A central claim is that the WTO's framework encourages a race to the bottom, where countries might lower labor and environmental standards to attract foreign investment. Critics argue this model inherently prioritizes corporate profits over the well-being of workers and the planet. Furthermore, many developing nations feel the deck is stacked against them. They point to agricultural subsidies in wealthy nations that create artificially low global prices, which their own farmers can't compete with. They also argue that strict intellectual property rules benefit corporations in developed nations at the expense of access to affordable medicines. On the other hand, supporters argue the WTO is the world's best defense against chaotic protectionism. By creating a predictable, rules-based system, it allows businesses to invest with confidence, gives consumers access to more goods at lower prices, and fosters peaceful interdependence. They contend that it raises overall global living standards, yet even defenders concede the WTO is struggling with relevance. Its 1990s rulebook is ill-equipped for the digital economy, leaving issues like data flows and e-commerce in a legal gray area. Simultaneously, the climate crisis presents a huge challenge. New tools like carbon border taxes could trigger disputes, pitting climate action against free trade principles. This strain is most visible in its institutional paralysis. The Doha Development Round of negotiations has been stalled for years. More critically, its dispute settlement system is broken. The appellate body, its Supreme Court, ceased to function in 2019 after the U.S. blocked the appointment of new judges. Without a final arbiter, the rules-based system is effectively toothless. Hope lies in reform. The immediate priority is restoring a functioning dispute settlement system. But since full consensus is so difficult, a pragmatic approach is plurilateral agreements. Deals among a coalition of the willing on specific topics like e-commerce. This is a way to break the deadlock and modernize rules for those who are ready. Ultimately, the fate of this body in Geneva has direct consequences for you. A reformed WTO can mean more stable supply chains and lower prices. A collapsing system could lead to more trade disputes and rising tariffs, impacting everything from your job security to your investments. It's a complex, hidden force, but its effects are profoundly real, connecting global ports to your personal paycheck. To keep making sense of these complex global systems that shape our economy, subscribe for more clear takes on markets and policy. Thanks for watching. Thanks for